All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us in this amazing event, Uplifting Voices, really centering, beautiful Black and brown, amazing advocates. And that's who you are. I'm Cat Atkinson. I use she, her pronouns. I am the intern at Voices for Virginia's Children, and I'm just so excited to be here and be a part of this. I'm also learning and beginning my journey as an advocate and as someone engaging in activist work. So I'm excited to learn from you and hear from you. If we could just go around and introduce ourselves, give us your name, age, pronouns, region, and then anything else that you want the folks to know. So can we start with Levi?
Hello, everybody. My name is Levi James. I am a junior at Thomasdale High School in Chesterfield, Virginia. I'm 17, and I am really honored and appreciative of this opportunity that we've been given here today.
And can I hear from Jaynae next?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jaynae Wright, and I am 21 years old, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm actually from Southwest Virginia, so that's a really interesting Appalachian intersection, being a woman of color in Appalachia, and I am actually a senior in college, so I'm heading to grad school next. Thank you.
And Ms. Ava.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was supposed to go. Hi, I'm Ava. I'm 16 years old. I currently live in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm a junior at St. Catherine's, and I use she, her pronouns.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. So excited to be here and be a part of your journeys. So I would love to hear, how did you start advocacy work, activist work, and tell us about your journey within that? Could I hear from Ava first?
So I started my advocacy journey, I'd say around majorly in 2020 when the George Floyd protests were going on. And our governor at the time, who was Northam, had announced that he was going to remove the Confederate monuments on Monument Avenue. So my mom and I naturally decided that we wanted to go take pictures. And it just so happened that me and my friend ended up taking a picture together, and it went viral overnight. And that kind of started my advocacy journey. And from that, we created an organization called Brown Ballerinas for Change, which is a nonprofit organization that helps increase diversity in dance and just allow dance to be more diverse and accessible for everyone. And me and my mom also wrote a book together called My Ancestors' Wildest Dreams, based around that day, which I believe was on June 6th of 2020. And that's really how I started my advocacy journey. And then I believe the same year I started my journey with Voices for Virginia Children and began going to the virtual General Assembly. But this year I actually got to participate in the in-person General Assembly and create some change, hopefully, in my community.
Yes, I just want to shout out the Brown Ballerinas for Change. I remember when that popped up on my social media feed, and I have a background in dance. I studied dance for 21 years of my life, and I just remember being like, oh, like teary-eyed, just, and also just so empowered by that. I don't know. I just wanted to shout out that kudos, and I really appreciate that you were able to do that too.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I remember hearing that Jaynae, you were inspired by that as well. So I would love to hear any part of your journey, how you started doing this work.
Thank you. Yes, I had to tell Ava when I finally met her in person. I had been a fangirl for a while, and I'm moving to Charlottesville, so I was just so inspired by Ava and her work, and had to tell her that for sure. I think that's an important part of activism, is telling folks when you're really proud of something that they are doing. I think that's a huge piece. So I guess this really talks about a journey and getting started. And so I'm really grateful for my parents. They are the original activists in my life, and I have icons who passed on before I had a chance to meet them, like Maya Angelou. If I could meet anyone who's passed on, it would be Maya Angelou. But my own family, I was inspired by them. And when I get discouraged now, even in my activist journey, they always have this sense of reminding me that who I've grown into is who I've always been, and that is an activist. And so little Jaynae would argue with teachers if they were, only making women kids. I remember when I was a little girl in the cafeteria, only the girls had to clean up at this public school, some crazy things like that. So I think a lot of us, one thing that I've met with youth advocates and noticed this commonality is we've always stood up for something. It's Black History Month and we're really excited to talk about that, but there's so many different things. A lot of activists aren't just siloed, and I think that's a beautiful thing as well. So I'm passionate about early education policy, and I'm passionate about my family's histories, ties to race and education, as my great-grandfather was not able to obtain any level of education. He wasn't even allowed to go to kindergarten and was illiterate. And I've been reflecting on my aunt, who's a high school counselor. She actually started her educational journey in segregated schools. And that's my aunt. We share the same birthday. I see her, she's a mentor in my life. And that's crazy that still is so prevalent, that in my family's living history, not even my great-grandfather who's passed on, but that racism is so embedded and it distorts our history in some really unfortunate ways. And I'm so inspired by my family that I think that's a huge part of why I am an advocate the way I am today.
Wow, that was like super touching. And I also feel you're just reminding me of all these times where I've been that person who's like, I'm gonna say something about this thing. I like to challenge the status quo. And I feel like that is very common across everyone that I've spoken to. But thank you so much for sharing about your family and your experience. And I just love to hear it. And Levi, I would love to hear from you about your journey and all the amazing things that you've already done.
Yeah, similar to Jaynae, my parents are really the ones who planted those seeds within me. I remember back during Obama's, when he was rerunning, and the first time he ran, we used to do lobbying. My mom put that poster, the sign up in front of our yard. I live in a pretty rural part of Virginia. It's kind of like you drive 5 minutes, you're in the local town, you come 5 minutes down my side, it's Confederate flags and guns, which I don't mind, it's home, but it was, I think it was good that we were representative in the neighborhood. We were Black and we were proud. When we first moved into the neighborhood, people used to drive by in cars and scream the N-word, throw bottles and stuff, but we remained strong. We stood and we stayed and planted our roots. And my mom was a history major in school. My dad is very well versed in knowledge in African history, as we have, African art around the house and everything. And so they really instilled in me pride within my Blackness and a sense of strength and worth. I went to a majority white elementary school, right? That's foundational years of early education, as we said earlier. And my classmates didn't know what Kwanzaa was. It's around Christmas time, everybody's decorating, everybody's waiting for good old Saint Nick to come down the chimney. And I was talking about my Kwanzaa events that I was going to and celebrating those days of Kwanzaa. And my mom gave me an article to bring into school so I could share Kwanzaa with my classmates and educate them and bring them the knowledge in my culture, my experience to the classroom, to kind of widen from their little small sect of rural Virginia. And I am truly appreciative of my parents. And they do inspire me, and they put in me a fire that keeps me going. And without them, I'm not sure if I would be the same person today. And actively trying to bring awareness, it's just spread information and education. Right now, I run a community garden in Petersburg, which is identified as a food desert area where the people don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, or limited access. And to see the effects of that garden, I've been running it for about 3 years now. It's truly helped a lot of people. It's inspired a whole urban gardening movement in Petersburg. And even in my small section, the neighborhood that I was helping, people started growing themselves. Everybody from the community poured into the garden, truly like showing love and showing unity. So it's from small things like sharing to a friend about Kwanzaa to big things like going to the General Assembly with Voices. I try to spread awareness and love, most importantly, wherever I go.
Wow. Yeah, you said like your family really planted roots, even though it felt like you were, being pushed out or made to feel different and other. And that just like is so much about what we do in advocacy is both staying and planting roots to make change. So I just like love that you bring that up. And the next question was like, who or what inspires you and fuels your confidence? And it sounds like that is, family truly is like the root of all of that. But I'm curious if there's other people or maybe places or experiences you've had that inspired you or fuels your confidence to continue to do this work and be resilient in it. Jaynae, do you want to share?
Sure. Yeah. So most people can probably tell by my complexion, I'm not as beautifully melanated as some of my brothers and sisters. So I am biracial. So I think in one way that's a beautiful thing, and it's my perspective, especially as a Appalachian woman. So I'm inspired by workers in the working class who fought on Blair Mountain for workers' rights and coal rights, and to not have politicians, degrade rural natural resources. So I'm inspired by that. I'm so inspired by Maya Angelou. That's like, again, if I don't mention her 10 times today, then I'm not truly like honoring her the way I read her quotes truly every day of my life. She is my inspiration. She fuels me, but also the strong Black women of my life, my grandmother, my sister, my aunt, my mom. I am so inspired by those folks, my adopted family in predominantly white areas. I've actually never lived in a non-predominantly white area or space. And so finding fast family that isn't necessarily by blood has been a source that I can continue to go back to and lean on, and that I want to be able to say when I know I'm doing caretaking for them and they're older, I'm making the world better than what you had to grow up in. And then they've done that for me. So I want to, make sure to honor their living legacy and those who have gone on. And so Maya Angelou fuels my confidence. If I really need a real boost, I listen to Lizzo, another hero of mine, a living legend. But that's kind of a fun thing. But Maya Angelou is my all-time hero, quote her all the time, big time hero for sure. And I just have to honor her every day, not just during Black History Month. She is the hero of my life. I can't tell you how many times I've read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings and highlighted the heck out of it. So if you've not read her works, that's a really good place to start.
Ooh, yes. You said it all. Levi, is there who or what inspires you and fuels your confidence in this?
I always like to attribute some of my core foundational building to three influential men: my father, President Barack Hussein Obama, and my pastor. And so right now I'll highlight President Barack Obama, because I know everybody says, oh, seeing people that look like me on TV. And as a child, I guess subconsciously I didn't really notice it, but he had a major impact on my life, my views. For career day in elementary school, little 5-year-old bobblehead Levi dressed up like President Barack Obama. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be around him. I saw him speak in Richmond multiple times. I was always watching the news. And even though I didn't comprehend the gravity of some of the things that he was doing and facing when in my youth, in retrospect, now looking at his legacy, I understand the type of character and resilience that this man had. From standing up in the faces of wearing a tan suit, right? To his motto, "Yes, we can." To the strong woman, because for every great man, there's an even greater woman behind Michelle Obama, and her legacy and her ideologies, right? When they go low, we go high. They are truly a dynamic family, and he watching his I don't know, just visible prowess. He emulates this aura that even through a screen, you feel the waves of it. And that was very influential for me. He influenced how I dress. Even to this day, I like to wear suits. Same thing with my pastor. He carries a type of, I like to call it the black man swagger. It's like, we know we're black. I love being black, and we're gonna walk in that. And in our with my pastor specifically, he was walking within his faith, teaching us to have a relationship with a higher power, and that has brought a lot of calmness to my life and many times of strife. So, and my father as well was a good role model. He taught me how to be tough, how to deal with things that were said to me, because it's a little joke. It's not very much funny, but every person of color remembers the first time you were called out of your name. That's how I'm going to put it. And my first time, I came home, I was distraught, crying, and my dad sat me down. He said, "Son, people could call you whatever they want to call you, but you know who you are." And I kind of carried that to the rest of my life. So those are the three men that I attribute to forming my young mind as a child.
Oh, yeah. Like, I really want to let that quote sit. Like, people can call you whatever they want to, but you know who you are. Like, that just, I feel like is just a theme throughout, like, being, just existing as people of color in the society. Like, we have to live up to all these societal expectations of who we are, but we just want to be who we are and just exist in the way that we want to exist and identify. So I like really resonate with that. So thank you. Ava, who inspires you? What inspires you? What gives you confidence in this work?
So for starters, I think my family inspires me the most. And I think a really big part of that is my ancestors inspiring me. I think the day that we took the picture, the first thought was my ancestors' wildest dreams. Like, no one would have ever been able to do this. And kind of just being able to realize where you stand in society and realize that you have privileges that your ancestors may not have had. And I promise I'll stop talking about Robert E. Lee, but funny story. One of my family members actually used to make his coats. So I thought it was, me and my mom always found it interesting how it went from, oh, your family made Robert E. Lee's coats, and it turned into kind of reclaiming our history to tell a new story. And I think that's really important, to be able to kind of not erase history, but be able to show a stronger outcome. And I think my family has been a really important part in my advocacy journey and has always inspired me. And then also people that have just come before me, different celebrities. I love SZA, love Beyonce, Rihanna, all the people that everyone loves. And I just think Black women or male role models are living proof that it's possible and that anyone can do it. And I think also something that fuels my confidence, I've never really been a person to stand down. I've always been really stubborn. And you can ask my mom, I'm always going to be the person in the right. So I think it's really important to me to kind of have those foundations and be able to be confident in yourself, because if you're not confident, and you don't love yourself, you're not going to be able to kind of reciprocate that energy to anyone else. And I really think first, confidence in yourself, no matter where you get it from, and then following that, you're going to be able to do anything you put your mind to.
Yes, just I wish I could just like keep hearing what you're saying over and over again in my head all the time, because it's so true. And I think I want to just highlight again, like, we get to see people who look like us on TV now, and music. Like, I remember how I felt when I watched Black Panther the first time, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I get to see myself in this. And that's so huge. And, we see that with our families and in our homes, but it's just like, there's something about like being our ancestors' wildest dreams. That is all of what we get to experience now. And it's so amazing. So what has been most difficult in this work? Changing changing what we've been talking about a little bit, but what also helps you overcome these challenges at the same time? So I'm curious, Levi, could you start us off this time?
Well, one of the hardest things was accepting the fact that people, A, care what I have to say, and B, that I can be open and vulnerable and express my true thoughts and feelings. A lot of times, like people I know of myself personally, it takes a while for me to warm up to you, right? For me to share like deep personal things, but many times in this work, you could say statistics, numbers, sure, that matters, but it's that deep human connection of emotion that can push somebody over the fence and have them truly understand and comprehend your experience. So I'm learning how to open up and how to speak from the heart truthfully to some of these people, may be strangers, right? A room full of random people that you've never met. And being able to do that confidently and with a sure and safe mind. Some of the things that helped me overcome that was practice, a little bit, talking to my mom, saying like, does this sound right? Because I don't want to sound weird, Eventually you get the cadence and the rhythm down. And also the knowledge that if I don't, who will? That's kind of what I put in my head. If Levi Charles James, that's a government name, y'all, doesn't stand up and speak, if I don't say, hey, this is wrong, if I don't highlight the inequity, the injustice, who will? Okay. Being the one to make that first step into the wilderness, to be the trailblazer. And that always pushes me, that mindset, that mantra fills me with strength when I'm faced with fear.
Thank you so much. That's such a good nugget for anyone to take with them on their advocacy journey. So thank you. Ava, what's been difficult in doing this work and being a viral, individual now, and what's helped you kind of deal with that and those challenges?
So I think first, something that no one really tells you when you start getting involved with advocacy is that you're not going to see immediate change, and that it doesn't just happen overnight, and that this isn't like some perfect world where it's like anything you want, you can have. So I think that was a really important realization, that things that you want to see change in your community or in the world really do take time, and you have to make the time for them. And then also, I think saying the same thing over and over can get really tiring when you feel like people aren't listening, but you kind of still have to push through that and be able to kind of ignore those people that don't want to listen to you and go to the people that do. And then also, something that I've kind of struggled with a little bit is getting really nervous out of nowhere and just being like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be the one to do this. Like, there's definitely someone else that can speak on this. But it's kind of like contradictory, because me as a person, I'm always talking. I'm always just like out, just on the go. So I think that was something that really struck me as different for myself, but I've been able to kind of overcome that a little bit. And warming up to people and getting more comfortable with people also helps with that, which I think is really important. Kind of not just doing the advocacy work, but also making different connections so that you can come back to it and continue to do more work. And then I think kind of a more easy answer to this question is people that want to see you fail could be difficult. But I think for me, people that want to see you fail or people that don't believe in you, I feel like that's all the more reason to do it, just to prove them wrong. And I feel like I've never really been a person that has backed down because someone's been like, oh, you can't do it. Because it's just like, I don't know. I feel like there's something oddly motivating about people not believing in you, as weird as that sounds. But I feel like that's kind of been something that's helped me overcome challenges. Just someone saying, you can't do this. And just, I absolutely have to prove them wrong.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I totally feel that. The fuel, like fueling the fire and making me be like, well, I'm just gonna show you, like, this is just how it is. And I really just also want to validate that, like, the fear and the exhaustion is just so real, especially for those of us who carry our identities. Like, it's exhausting to have to always be the person who is the trailblazer, but we got to do the work, right? So I just want to validate that and validate that it can be hard and tiring for sure. Jaynae, what about you?
Yeah, so I think two things. I think what's been difficult for me is taking up space. So I have a tendency to blab. So I'm trying to work on being mindful of my vocal space, but really being raised by the same women that I'm so greatly inspired by. I come from a house and some raising where you get told, if the elderly don't speak up or the people who are older don't speak up, then it's certainly not your place to speak up. And I've really had to work through why didn't, some of my ancestors or, even more recent relatives speak up during their time in injustice. And I had to realize the privilege that I have, A, as a biracial person, but B, in the generation that I'm in now and where things are, that I don't have to face the same level of threat of violence that they did. And so I think just pushing myself to process through actually showing up and taking space is a difficult leap of advocacy work. I think that's perhaps one of the biggest leaps. And there are, of course, still, threats, and there's possibilities of things. I don't want to negate the risk that we face in this generation either. And the second thing is similar to some of that work that I've had to internally do, and that's just the region in which I exist. I've lived in North Carolina, Virginia, and Tennessee, and all of those places have some very storied, challenging history, especially when it comes to race-related policy and reality. And so I also, as a biracial person, have had to check, internalized racism that we all have when it's been really easy. As someone who's on the line, sometimes I've been told more times, I have been called the N-word, unfortunately, but I've been told more to go back to Mexico. A lot of people misidentify me, but realizing that just because I have this particular vantage point or privilege as an advocate doesn't mean that I'm not still in the fight and that I'm not in the game. And so I have to navigate that. It is challenging in extremely red areas where I live, extremely divisive areas. It feels really challenging to have just sincere curiosity and honest dialogue, which I welcome. You don't have to exactly have the same entry point that I do, but it's really difficult even in the region that I live in now. Southwest Virginia was actually the lynching capital of the world. And that's a terrible, terrible reality. And there's hurt there and there's injury there morally to say that, but to speak that truth as well and to recognize how that's become prevalent to ideology today, that makes the work difficult in Southwest Virginia or in Appalachia, where you're doing the work, but also finding amazing people who have unlearned some really racist ideology, which unfortunately has come from some people from faith backgrounds, from academic backgrounds, from a variety of backgrounds. I've met incredible people from this region who have unlearned, who have done the work, and who are there to support their brothers and sisters of color. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Their brothers and sisters within and siblings within the LGBTQIA plus community. That's a really beautiful thing. And that is restorative in its own right. So definitely the region and just taking up space within the region when it is a very minority thing to do. It's not super regular that you hear someone strike up a conversation about, you know, women's rights or race relations or anything like that.
Yeah, I totally understand. I also lived in North Carolina and have experienced a lot of similar things that you have as a biracial person myself. So I will continue to say, take up the space for everyone. You got to take it up. Like that is, and part of the reclaiming is that taking of space and sharing the truths that are really kind of icky to have to share, but we have to be able to change the story and change the script. So in that, like, what are some moments of joy and pride in your work that you've experienced? I think that I'm sure you have many of amazing stories of beautiful things that have happened. So I'll start with Ava on this one.
Okay, I'm gonna try to keep this shorter because there's a bunch of different moments. But going back to Brown Ballerinas for Change, we launched our ambassador program last year, and we had 18 or elite dancers. And I think it was really great to see how we as an organization could grow and going to different community events without it just being 4 of us, and having just a larger team, I think was really important. Second, I think connecting with other youth advocates has been really big and really nice. And I think Voices has been a really good outreach program for that. Going back to that in general, the lunch after the General Assembly has got to be like one of the top moments. It was just like we were all feeling on top of the world, and it was great. And we all went in there kind of nervous. And I think we found moments of joy, even if it was stressful, or even if something may not have gone as good as you wanted it to. I think that's really important as well, to just have people, like-minded people around you who really want to kind of do the same work that you do. And then also with the General Assembly, the reward of seeing different bills that you lobby for pass, I think that's really great and really important to know that you could be a small part of the story of something that would change the lives of the future youth. Also, I think after we took the picture, different companies that create dance attire came out with skin tone ballet shoes and skin tone tights and skin tone point shoes. And I think that also was a really big change in the dance community that made it all worth it. And I just think if you look for the moments of joy, it doesn't feel like work, and it feels like you're actually doing something. And just like having the ability to know that someone else will benefit from the good that you've done is really reassuring and makes you want to just keep going.
Yeah, I remember when they started bringing out the skin tone tights and stuff. And I was like, where's this been all these years? But it's such a huge celebration of the impact. So yeah, I love that. What are some moments of joy and pride in for you, Levi?
Well, some moments of pride would be going back to my community garden and seeing it fully in blossom, seeing people take ownership of it. It started off very rocky. Once we came a weekend, there was beer bottles and cigarettes and trash all over the place. It looked like somebody ran through the garden and messed up all of our beds. And it was frustrating, when you're offering a hand of help and you're trying to do something positive and still you face resistance. but perseverance is strong, and it is a necessary tool. It's like mental fortitude, because I kept on going back every weekend, kept on going back. Me and my mom working, and eventually they stopped, right? Because you can't fight me that long. I stay in the ring, man. So and then when it finally clicked in, when you finally had some people that said, "Hey, I care. I'll watch the garden at night, man. I care. I'll water it for you. Take a weekend off. I'll be there. I'll plant some seeds for you, Levi." And seeing people pour time and energy into it, that was truly a wonderful experience. And we even inspired local people to start their own little gardens. And we helped them out. We gave them resources and tools. We was like, this is how you do it, ABC, XYZ. You could go and flourish and do your own stuff. And then they would still help with our garden as well. So it was a symbiotic relationship. So that was it made me happy, brought a smile to my face to see that.
Ooh, I'm just like envisioning, like, when you pick one of those dandelions and you blow the little fluffy things off of it and it spreads and it grows more and everyone calls them weeds, but it's just beautiful, supportive, symbiotic growth and change. And I'm touched. Jaynae, what are moments of joy and pride in your work?
Oh yes, I'm like Ava. I'm gonna try again to be mindful of my vocal space. So I'll quickly say my college is a predominantly white institution and has some challenging history here in Southwest Virginia with enslaving human beings, which is really and not a beautiful part of our history, and we need to do a lot more work to reckon with that. And so I was very touched when I was doing a lot of DEI work here on campus loudly, and did it also in a student government capacity. I was the DEI person for the student body, and the next year they elected me president. And so I became the first female student of color student body president here, and this is my second year in this role. So I've been immensely touched to be able to be part of the history that's rewriting or adding to. Ava, I think you had a good point about not necessarily rewriting history, but we're adding to it in a super beautiful brown way. And I'm really honored to be doing that work. And then also I do a lot of early care and education work. And so there was need in my local community for a Girl Scout troop. And as a former Girl Scout myself, no parents would take that on. And there were a lot of challenges. It's a high need school. Transportation is an issue. There are some other concerns. So my best friend and I, who is the coolest anti-racist ally, beautiful sister I could ever dream of, decided we're going to do something about it. We're going to start a Girl Scout troop, which is kind of unheard of for people who aren't parents. And it's been a beautiful thing because in this very heavily, I'm talking 98% white area, over a third of our troop are gals of color. And that is such a beautiful thing. And for them to come up and say we're one of the few safe adults in their life is a beautiful thing. To build out literacy, to give them an hour a week where they know someone cares and support them however they need. We've had friends pitch in, fellow college students will use some of their allowance for the week or their student employment money and sponsor a Girl Scout so she can have her vest. We've spent our own money, but the joy of those gals, that young brown joy, is just the most beautiful thing. It's just been an incredible experience. So that's by far been one of my favorite advocacy and work endeavors.
Ugh, I'm like about to start crying on here. You guys just like inspire me so much in all of this work. I don't even know what else to say. But what would you tell other aspiring advocates of color and people who are trying to do the work that you're doing? What words of encouragement, anything that you would give to these young people? I'll start with Levi.
Some words of encouragement I would give them would be who you are, be proud and confident in who you are. Your voice matters, your opinion matters. And you don't have to be president of the United States. You could be one man in one small state of the Virginia, one county, doing something to benefit another person, to positively affect your community, and you are doing something, right? You don't have to do these grandiose things. One thing, one event, serving a soup kitchen, starting a Kwanzaa event, even that small Girl Scout troop. Nobody knows. Jaynae's not being put on the world stage for that, but she's doing that one thing and it's making an impact. It's changing somebody's life. So that's why I implore you to find something. Anything helps, anything works. It could be big, it could be small, but do the work that you know is good. And that's all my advice.
Thank you. Ava, what would you tell other aspiring advocates of color?
First, I would say be sure of yourself and don't let anyone make you unsure of yourself. And then I would say dream big. Don't make your dream smaller for anyone else just because you feel like you can't achieve it. And even if you don't get as high as you want to, you still made some progress. And I feel like it's really important to notice when you've done something, even if it's not what you wanted the outcome to be. Let your path kind of guide you where you need to be. And then advocate using your gifts. I feel like when people say advocacy, they automatically assume like, oh, I have to go in public and do a speech, or I have to, I don't know, like change the entire world. But I feel like using any gift that you have is really important. And for me, that was dance. And even if it may not seem like a big impact to anyone else, getting skin tone tights and point shoes and ballet shoes is so reassuring in the work that we've done. And it just makes you feel like you belong. And then once again, don't let anyone make you small. I feel like if you let someone make you feel less important, then they've won and they don't deserve to have that satisfaction of making you feel that way. And then finally, I think it's really important to, like I said before, look for the tiny moments that make it worth it, because you could feel really tired and stressed out, or you could feel overworked or like you haven't made any progress. But if you really look for those moments, they are there. And I think that's kind of more of a mindset thing. You have to have the mindset that there is something good going on and that it all just can't be negative. You have to really look for moments, even if they're super small.
Yeah, I agree. Jaynae?
Yeah, it's hard to add on, be last to, add on to those amazing words of wisdom, especially from people younger than me. Y'all are so much more wise. But I think my first idea or thought is jump in authentically. Dr. Maya Angelou says, when people show you who they are the first time, believe them. So a lot of times people kind of interpret that as, oh, when someone who's bad or treats you bad shows you who you are, believe them, don't give them all these chances. But the way I see that, especially in relation to advocacy work, is jump in authentically. You're gonna make mistakes. I'm not an expert on many facets of really important advocacy, but I'm gonna come in with my authentic self and learn from there. So you don't have to, you are an expert. And I love Voices kept reassuring us on Advocacy Day that we were the experts. We are, but we're also the perpetual learners. At least that's what I think an advocate is. And so if you're not jumping in authentically, if you're kind of trying to front that you are so woke or you are at the max capacity of woke, then that really says maybe not so much, right? So I think jump in truthfully and authentically and take up that space and live for those, seek out those moments of joy and protect your peace, please, in the process. That doesn't always have to mean you have to physically be separate, but as Ava spoke to, find your niche of how you advocate and do that well, and find those people who will restore you, who you can lean on, who can give you the finger snaps as we've been doing, or the dittos, because that's important, especially when sometimes you feel alone, or like we are fewer. We're sometimes the smaller voice as advocates, or so we feel, but there's so many of us. So do jump in, but then when you're in, protect your peace in the process.